Forget wind tunnel upgrades and engine loopholes. Right now, there is a single terrifying number hidden deep inside Ferrari's telemetry that is causing absolute panic down the pit lane. 15%. We are not talking about a lucky setup tweak. We are talking about a staggering 15% delta in electrical energy retention at the end of a stint, sitting squarely in favor of Lewis Hamilton over Charles Leclerc. When Maranello signed the 7-time world champion, the paddock laughed it off as a romantic marketing coup. They were dead wrong. Hamilton has not just adapted to the SF26, he has brutally reverse-engineered the physics of these draconian 2026 regulations, turning his very own driving style into the ultimate energy recovery system. Let me explain exactly how his left foot is currently dismantling the F1 grid. To truly understand this 15% discrepancy, we have to strip away the romance of racing and look at the brutal mathematics of the current era. The 2026 power units rely heavily on a 50/50 split between internal combustion and electrical output, meaning that the MGUK is no longer just a helpful boost button to be deployed on the main straight. It is the lifeblood of the car, and if you drain it prematurely through inefficient cornering phases, you are essentially driving a spectacularly heavy tractor by the time you reach the braking zone. Every single micro movement of the steering wheel, every millimeter of slip angle, and every fraction of a second spent in the lateral load phase acts as an attack on the battery. Therefore, the championship is no longer just about who has the most aerodynamic downforce or the bravest late braker. It is exclusively about who can manipulate the car's momentum to keep the battery constantly replenished. And this is exactly where the styles of Hamilton and Leclerc violently diverge. Let us start by analyzing Charles Leclerc. Because to appreciate Hamilton's genius, you have to understand the sheer unadulterated speed of his teammate. Leclerc is arguably the most gifted single-lap qualifier of his generation, and his natural instinct is to drive what engineers refer to as a U-shaped cornering line. This means Charles likes to carry an immense amount of minimum speed into the apex, leaning heavily on the outer edges of the tires and trusting his astonishing reflexes to catch the rear end as it inevitably tries to step out. In the ground effect era, prior to 2026, this style was absolutely devastating because those cars generated their peak downforce when the floor was kept as close to the tarmac as possible during high-speed lateral sweeps. Leclerc would simply dance on the edge of the grip limit, carrying momentum like a pendulum, swinging through the apex and daring the physics of the car to betray him. However, the 2026 regulations have turned that beautiful flowing U-shaped line into a massive thermodynamic liability. When Leclerc carries that high minimum speed through a long corner, he is spending significantly more time under lateral load, meaning the car is scrubbing sideways across the asphalt for a longer duration. This prolonged lateral friction does two very damaging things to the SF26. Firstly, it spikes the surface temperature of the Pirelli tires. And secondly, it demands continuous low-level throttle application just to maintain the car's momentum through the arc of the corner. This constant teasing of the throttle prevents the MGUK from entering its optimal harvesting phase, effectively pausing the battery's regeneration cycle while simultaneously draining the electrical reserves to overcome the aerodynamic drag of the mid-corner scrub. Now we pivot to the other side of the Maranello garage, where Lewis Hamilton is operating a completely different geometrical philosophy. Hamilton has spent his entire career perfecting the V-shaped cornering line, a technique that was born in his McLaren days, refined during the dominant Mercedes era, and has now become the absolute holy grail for the 2026 regulations. Instead of carrying maximum speed through a long sweeping arc, Hamilton sacrifices his mid-corner momentum entirely. He brakes phenomenally late, diving deep into the corner before aggressively rotating the car in a very short, sharp phase right at the apex. It looks less graceful than Leclerc's flowing arcs, almost violently abrupt at times. But the physics behind this approach are nothing short of a masterclass in energy conservation. The secret to this V-shape lies in Hamilton's legendary mastery of trail braking, which is the exact point where the 15% energy delta is born. Trail braking is the art of gradually releasing the brake pedal as you turn into the corner, managing the weight transfer so the front tires remain loaded and planted into the tarmac. But in the 2026 cars, trail braking is not just about mechanical grip. It is the primary trigger for the MGUK harvesting map. The Mercedes chassis is notoriously nervous in dirty air, and it fundamentally demands a driving style that punishes the front tires. This brings us to the concept of tire whispering, a term heavily associated with Hamilton, but rarely explained in technical terms. It is not some dark art or magical feeling, it is the direct mathematical result of his V-shaped driving geometry. By squaring off the corners and doing all of his aggressive rotation in one short, sharp phase, Lewis dramatically reduces the amount of time the tire carcass spins under sustained lateral load. The surface temperature of the Pirelli rubber spikes briefly during the apex rotation, but because he straightens the wheel so early on the exit, the tire immediately begins to cool down as it rolls longitudinally down the straight. Leclerc's prolonged U-shape keeps the tire under stress for a longer period, slowly cooking the core temperature until the grip begins to fall off a cliff. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Hamilton's current form for his rivals is the sheer mental bandwidth he possesses inside the cockpit. In the 2026 Formula, drivers are effectively operating a supercomputer at 300 kilometers per hour. The steering wheel is littered with rotary dials and toggles, designed to manipulate brake migration, differential locking, and precise MGUK harvesting maps on a corner-by-corner basis. Many drivers, particularly the younger generation, have to allocate so much of their mental capacity simply to keeping the car on the track that they rely on preset lap-wide engine modes, compromising their efficiency in specific tricky sectors of the circuit. Hamilton has spent over a decade at the absolute pinnacle of hybrid-era complexity, and he operates these systems with the subconscious ease of breathing. Because his V-shaped cornering style is so methodical and structured, brake straight, rotate sharply, exit straight, he has distinct stable phases within the corner where he can physically take his fingers off the wheel to adjust his brake bias or harvesting toggles mid-turn. We have seen onboard footage of Lewis seamlessly migrating his brake bias rearwards right at the apex of the hairpin, optimizing the rear grip for traction, and then flicking a toggle to dump his electrical energy the exact millisecond his steering wheel is straight. He is acting as a human CPU, continuously patching the software of the car in real time. For Leclerc, this reality must be incredibly difficult to swallow. Charles is a driver of pure passion and instinct, someone who dances with the car and extracts lap time through sheer bravery and mechanical sympathy. To be told by the telemetry screen that your beautiful, flowing driving style is mathematically inferior to your teammates' aggressive stop-start geometry is a bitter pill. But to his absolute credit, Charles is intensely studying Hamilton's data. We are starting to see the monogasque driver attempt to square off his corners during free practice sessions, deliberately trying to rewrite his own muscle memory to appease the battery demands of the SF26. My final verdict on this engineering saga is incredibly straightforward, but it carries immense weight for the destiny of this championship. Lewis Hamilton has not found a magic button on the Ferrari steering wheel, nor has he simply lucked into a car that suits his style. He has forensically dissected the physics of the 2026 rulebook and realized that the fastest way around a racetrack is no longer the path of least resistance, but the path of maximum regeneration. By marrying his legendary trail-breaking finesse with the sheer efficiency of the SF26's active aero philosophy, he has made himself virtually untouchable in race trim. The data does not lie, the telemetry is conclusive, and the rest of the paddock should be absolutely terrified. The maestro has finally found his ultimate instrument, and he is playing a tune that no one else can replicate.